Wings of Fire, the Dragonet Prophecy. Clay had never really believed in legends about the Nightwings, secretive dragons who can read minds, a hidden kingdom that no one can find, a mystery queen, the power to see the future. The way they appeared from darkness to deliver prophecies that shaped the world all sounded like fairy tales, as about as likely as a world ruled by scavengers instead of dragons. Besides, Clay knew Starflight, and Starflight was many things. Annoying, long-winded, smart, too serious. But he had no magical powers, and he was never, ever scary. But the next evening, when the dragoness as a bottomless pit loomed out of the shadows of the entrance tunnel, Clay felt the rumors about the Nightwings come crashing into his head like a collapsing rock wall. Marcia was even bigger than Kestrel, and 5 times more scarier. He spread his jagged bat-like wings, and the silver scales. He had silver scales like stars in the underside of his wings, like Starflight did. But on him, it seemed to glitter from a long distance and cast a cold glow. He looked like he could easily rip off each of their heads in one bite. He also looked like he already hated the 5 dragonets, which wasn't what Clay had expected at all. Were they such a disappointment already? Maybe Marcia was reading their minds and knew how confused they were about the prophecy. Or maybe he was seeing the future and his visions were of all failure. Clay could see Sun trampling at his sides. He felt the same way, petrified in place, as if his scales were being slowly peeled off one by one. But while the great Nightwing inspected him, on his other side, Starflight was more still than Clay had ever seen him. Starflight was always frozen when he was frightened. It was like he hoped that by not moving, he would disappear from view and the danger would pass right by. Clay couldn't see Glory, but knew that Marcia saw her. The huge black dragon stared down at the Rainwing dragon for a small eternity. His snout twitched with ripples of disgust. His forked black tongue slipped across his teeth. Clay wished his own wings were as vast as the cavern itself, so he could hide all his friends from Marcia. He wished his talons were as huge as stalactites and sharp as rock shards. He wished he were big enough and brave to be brave, and brave enough to be big. He never wanted anything so much as he wanted to protect his friends from this tall, hissing, scornful, immensely dangerous dragon. He really hoped that Marcia wasn't reading his mind right now. Think about cows, think about cows, think about fat, delicious cows. Marcia pivoted his head slowly to glare down at Kestrel. He lifted one long claw and pointed at Glory. "What is that?" "What is that?" he said, his voice lowered just within his voice loaded with just enough venom to kill 20 dragons mid-flight. Starflight took a step back, and Clay saw Glory. She was sitting on her haunches with her long tail curled over her talons. Trails of violet and gold creased each other through her scales. Only the shards of flame around her feathery ears hinted that she was upset. She stared calmly back at Marcia. "There was an accident," Kestrel said. "We lost the skywing egg, so we had to get another from somewhere." "From the rain wings," Marcia interrupted, scathingly. "It was his idea," Kestrel snarled, whipping her tail towards Webs. "He brought her egg here." "At least we have 5 dragonettes," said Webs. "That's what matters." Marcia peered down his long neck, long black snout at Glory. His eyes shifted to Sunny, who let out a tiny squeak and sank a little towards the ground. "More like 4.5, he grunted. "Are you supposed to be the Sandwing? Didn't you eat? What's wrong with you?" There was a long, horrible pause while Sunny tried to squeak out an answer. "She does," Tsunami blunted. "She eats fine, and as much as anyone." "It's not her fault she's small," Starflight chimed in, to Clay's surprise. "She's a good fighter," Clay said, "and so is Glory." "Stop talking now," Marcia said, and silence dropped over them. His sharp, menacing gaze landed on Clay. "Think about cows, think about cows, think about cows." The tall Nightwing turned to the 3 Guardians. "Something has gone very wrong here." "Yes," Tsunami bursted in again. "It has. And I can't tell you what. We're being treated like prisoners. We've never been outside these caves, not once. All we know about the world we're supposed to save is what we learned in scrolls. We're supposed to be the most important dragonettes in the world, but these 3 treat us like blind salamanders." Clay couldn't believe it. Wasn't she scared of Marcia too? "Tsunami, hold your tongue," Dune snapped. "I will not," she cried. "Please get us out of here," she said to Marcia. "Take us away with you." "Please don't," Clay thought. "I mean, think about cows, think about cows, think about cows." Now that he's seen the Nightwing, he'd rather stay trapped in here. "Ungrateful lizard," Kestrel growled. Without warning, Marcia lunged at Tsunami. His teeth flashed like bright white lightning, darting towards her neck. "It's really like the night sky falling on you," Clay thought, and then discovered he was moving too. He flung himself at the Nightwing's huge, rigid back before he could stop to think about what he was doing. His claws sank into a small gap between the shifting black scales, scrabbling for a hold. His tail thrashed as he tried to balance. Below him, he saw Tsunami rolling away and spinning back to fight. Her blue talons slashed at Marcy's nose and underbelly. Clay tried frantically to remember his battle training. He fluttered himself along the back dragon's back, sneaked his neck forwards and bit as hard as he could. Ow! His jaws exploded with pain, and he reared back. In the black-to-black scales, it was impossible to find a weak spot. Marcia jumped away from Tsunami and shook his whole body violently. Clay lost his grip and went flying through the air. He landed with a thud, sliding halfway into the river. As he staggered back to his feet, he saw Tsunami and Marcia facing each other in battle position. Marcia made a grinding noise deep in his throat. He stepped back and swung his tail around into view. Clinging to Marcia's tail, her teeth firmly planted in the vulnerable spot near the end, was Sunny. Clay wished he'd remember about that spot, which every dragon has, no matter which tribe they're from. Ha, Marcia rumbled. That was surprising. He pried Sunny loose with his front talons as if she was a tiny blood-sucking insect. That one will do, Marcia said, pointing at Tsunami. None of the big dragons moved at all as he attacked their chargers. Neither had Glory. Neither had Starflight. He staggered up beside his Nightwing friend, who was doing an excellent imitation of a stalactite. Starflight lowered his head and averted Clay's eyes. And that one will do, Marcia said, nodding at Clay. Kestrel snorted. The Nightwing approved of him. Clay was confused. It wasn't as if Clay's attack had done any good. Even when Clay was defending his friends, apparently he wasn't angry enough to drag his inner monster out. Couldn't Marcia hear everyone thinking about how Clay was going to let them all down? This one, Marcia studied Sunny from her harmless tail to her weirdly golden scales and moss green eyes. We'll have to see. We followed the prophecy, Dune insisted. She wasn't in the clutch of eggs. I found her egg alone, buried out in the desert, just like the prophecy said. The three guardians never talked about where they got their eggs. Sunny stared at Jin hopefully, but he fell silent under Marcia's dark eyes. As for you, Mercy said to Starflight, I assume you used your Nightwing powers to figure out that I wasn't going to harm the Sea-Wing. Perhaps you even had a vision of me visit today. No doubt you already know that I'm going to take you into the next cabin for a private conversation. Clay started. A private conversation with Marcia sounded about as much fun as having your ears roasted. He would not envy Starflight as the two dragons slid towards the study room. Marcia paused in the archway and looked back at the Guardians. We'll talk about her later. She didn't look at Glory, but everyone else did. She flicked her ears and lifted her chin a little higher as Marcia's footsteps faded away into the tunnel. What does that mean? Clay worried. What was there to talk about? Stupid Sea-Wings. Kestrel snort across the cave. It sucked and stuck Tsunami's snout. Complained to the first strange dragon you see. Trying to make us look bad. Whining about your life after all we've given up for you. If you hate this too, why don't you let us go? She shot back. It's for your own safety, Whibbs interjected. His voice was more gentler than Kestrel's, but Clay could see he was angry. He was angry from the way his long blue-green tail lashed on the floor. That's what all this is for. The talons of peace need you to survive long enough to fulfill the prophecy. You have no idea how many dragons would love to get their claws on you five. Or what they do when they did, Dune growled. It's their job to keep you alive, Kestrel said, or else I would have strangled you myself a long time ago. Great, Tsunami said. Now, well, it's been a terrific life. Thanks very much. Kestrel made the hissing fire is coming noise. Clay grabbed Tsunami's tail and tugged it back towards the river. We are grateful, Sunny said, jumping in front of Kestrel. She stood up on her back legs, not even half the red dragon's size. Her golden ears twitched. We would much rather be alive than not alive. We're glad that you're keeping us this way. We really are. Come on, Webb said. He prodded Kestrel and Dune towards their cave. We need to talk. Now he has something to say, Kestrel grumbled as Tsunami threw herself into the river and sank to the bottom in a steam of furious bubbles. There she caught up with her talons over her head. It got very quiet in the caves. Sunny and Clay exchanged glances, then looked over at Glory. The Rainwing was sitting at the same spot, with her tail still neatly curled over her feet. She yawned. Clay wished he could ever be that calm. If he was nothing, it was as if nothing bothered her at all. "Are you all right?" Clay said. He came around and sat in front of her, studying her face. Sunny sidled up beside Glory, brushing her violet wings with her own smaller golden ones. "Of course," Glory said. "I mean, we knew what was going to happen. It's not like the Minders had been talking about how awesome I am this whole life." "But you are," Clay said. Glory tilted her head to look at him. "Awesome," he insisted. "They just don't see. They see a rainwing." She said with a shrug, "I don't care. It's their own fault for bringing me here." "Why didn't you fight Marcia when we did?" Sunny said. Then maybe he'd know how brave and fierce you were too." "Why bother?" Glory said. "It was obviously a test, and I've already failed." A splotch of sky blue scales on her back paused, and then the color began to spread across the others, eating up the blue, purple, and gold. "Well, we don't care what the prophecy says or what the Marcia thinks," Clay said. "You're our 5th Dragonette. We don't want anyone else." Laura gave him a rueful look. "That's very sweet." She yawned again. "I'm going to take a nap." "Now?" said Sunny, alarmed. "Is that a good idea?" Glory fell asleep every day, usually after lunch, for a couple of hours. But Clay expected her to stay awake while Marcia was around. He knew he wouldn't want the big dark dragon to catch him sleeping. He glanced at the tunnels to the study room, wondering uneasily how far the Nightwing's telepathy reached and whether he could read Clay's mind through rocks. I'm tired," Glory snapped. "And they all think I'm lazy anyway. Nothing I can do that can change that." Clay knew Glory wasn't lazy. She worked harder than anyone in battle training and learning the Dragon's War history, even though none of the big Dragonettes ever noticed. She just had a nap in the middle of the day, probably for some random reason. Although it didn't seem to help. Glory was as prickly as tired after napping as she was before. "Wake me if anything exciting happens," Glory said. "But make sure it's actually exciting, not Sunny exciting." "I don't think..." Something squeaked in protest. "I don't think everything's exciting," Sunny flapped her wings. "But you guys don't think enough things are exciting." "Think about it this way," Glory said. "Time to leave the caves and fulfill the prophecy. Exciting. You caught another weird-looking crab into the river. Not exciting. Get it?" She poked Sunny again. uncurled her tails, now fully blue, and slipped inside her sleeping cave. Sunny blinked at Clay. "I know," he said. "The last clap was really weird looking." "It was, wasn't it?" she said. I wouldn't have minded if you'd woke me up to see it," Clay added kindly. "Well, good," she said. "I know. That's why you get to eat half of it instead of anyone else." She headed for her favorite stalactite and started climbing it. She hooked her claws into the hole and dropped her that dotted the bumble's shape. Clay clambered up the rock beside her. "Hey, Sunny," he said. "What would you think about running away?" She paused and looked at him in shock. "You mean leaving the caves without our guardians?" "I know we couldn't." "We have to do what the prophecy says." "Do we?" he asked. "I mean, we have to," she said quickly as she nearly lost her grip on the stalactite in surprise. "But what if the Talons of Peace don't understand the prophecy any better than we do? Maybe we need to get out and stop the war ourselves." Sunny settled on top of the stalactite and curled her tail towards the "I don't think that's a good idea, Clay." "If we just follow the prophecy, everything will be fine." Her claws battered at the tip of the lower stalactite, but she was still too small to reach it. She sat back with a furious sigh. Clay glanced at the soft, blue, glowing glow coming from Glory's cave. Follow the prophecy. But he couldn't help thinking that a real prophecy would include Glory. What if the prophecy was wrong?